pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we need approval of the agenda. I do have a couple things I'm going to add under, after commissioner report, discussion items. Brian, our engineer, will be here to discussion about La Crescent Township shop. And we're going to table the minutes till next week because we don't have the final copy yet to review. So, and Jeff, did you have anything else? Oh yeah, and I wanted under commissioner reports area, we're going to discuss all our committees again. I made a note of the ones that we definitely need to change around, and Eric had a couple that didn't work for him right now, so we go discuss those also. So that's under commissioner report. Are there any other additions or corrections? Need a motion to approve the agenda with those changes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment period. I see Ginny here. She's not public comment. She's actually scheduled to be on our agenda, so welcome. Well, we
With that, yeah.
move right in. This is our new director for workforce development.
You want me to sit or stand? Or?
You can sit. That's fine.
Then the
Have a
microphone
chair.
works better for us if you're close to it.
This,
Yep.
this, okay. All right. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Ginny Rittman, and I'm the new executive director for Workforce Development Incorporated. And so one of the first things I wanted to do was just kind of go around and share some information about who we are and what we do. And I think you probably know a little bit about our MFIB contract and our welfare to work. But I wanted to share just kind of regionally what we're all about as an organization and answer any questions you have. So how much time do I have, just so I...
As much as you need. As
Okay.
much as you need, yeah.
All right, well, I'll start with an overview, and then we can kind of go whatever direction you'd like. But
Time's up.
if we want to start with this PowerPoint presentation, if you have that in front of you,
Yes.
I'm going to start with that. So Workforce Development Incorporated, our mission is to develop and advance the workforce of Southeast Minnesota. Our vision is there for you to read over, but we're a 10-county organization, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we serve the 10 counties in Southeast Minnesota, kind of the triangle from up by Goodhue County down to this county as our most southern county, and then across to Albert Lea, Austin area, and up through Faribault and Owatonna. So that's kind of our corner of the state. We are not the same workforce development area as Winona. They are their own separate area, so that confuses people from time to time. But so we are the other 10 counties in Southeast, and there's a map in here as well. So to talk about a little bit about just kind of workforce development, I'll kind of start at the federal level, work it down to the state level, and then kind of how it's operated at our local level. So at the federal level, we have a funding stream and a law called the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And so many of you are probably familiar with that. That is kind of our federal level workforce development funding, as well as the law that we operate under. So it's only about 25% of our funding in this area, but it is the law that we still operate under. So all of our programs and services align with the WIOA Act, as well as the WIOA funding streams. And then as that trickles down to kind of the state level, there are 16 then workforce development areas in the state of Minnesota. And so there's, for every part of the country, every part of the state, there's a workforce development area and a workforce development board. And so again, there's 16 in the state of Minnesota, and we serve this region 6, if you can see it on your map, that southeast 10-county area. So the programs and services are very similar across the country in terms of what's provided under WIOA, but it has enough flexibility in that. Also, our other funding streams that we have enough flexibility where we can really make them our own and kind of tailor them to what the needs of the region are, the needs of the employers in the region. And so we have, at any given time, about 65 different funding streams that keep us alive as a nonprofit organization. So even though we do have some federal and state resources through workforce development, We also have, you know, a number of other private and foundation grants that we work with as well. The next slide is just talking a little bit about the role of the chief elected official. So under WIOA, we actually have what's called a joint powers board, and that is made up in our area of one county commissioner for each of the 10 counties that we serve. And that board really operates, is really kind of our fiscal operator. And so they are able to make decisions and suggestions about our programs and services under workforce development, as well as where the funding is allocated and what we are using our resources for. So that Joint Powers Board, which Teresa sits on, is a really important aspect of our work and really drives kind of the work that we do under workforce development. And it kind of talks a little bit in here about what the role of that person is and the role of that board. And then on the other side, on the private sector, we have what's called the Workforce Development Board. And you can see in here what our structure is for that board. So we have the Joint Powers Board, which is the 10 local elected officials, and then we have our Workforce Development Board. And that board is made up of 61% private employers in the region. So we have representation from multiple sectors, manufacturing, healthcare, et cetera. And then we also have representation from all 10 county private sector as well. That's really important to us to make sure that we have that regional perspective. Excuse me. And so we do have a 33-member board. It's a pretty large board, but that gives us that representation from across the region. All right, then I have a slide in there for labor market information. There's 2 handouts in your folder, and it's probably more information than you ever wanted to know about labor market information in Houston County. But one of them is a regional handout that kind of discusses regional trends and regional population growth and that sort of thing. And then the other one is very specific to Houston County, and that's the big, about 20-page packet here. So I won't, spend a lot of time on all of the details, but I do want to highlight a few of the things that kind of pop out to me regarding Houston County. And I do apologize, there's no page numbers, so I'm just going to kind of hop around here on what I feel is kind of noteworthy, I guess.
So Jenny, just keeping track here in this document right now?
Yes, yep, thank you. The large Houston County packet there. So when I was asked to present today, one of the things that I was asked to talk about is just kind of labor market in general. What does our region look like? What does Houston County look like? And how does our work support that? And if you look at the numbers in Houston County specifically, I'm sure it's no surprise to you that there is sort of a population decline, especially in the workforce population and the workforce participation as well, and that the growth in the county is really in the minority populations. And so you can kind of see that throughout the first 5 to 6 pages. But one thing that's really striking to me is there's a graph on the bottom, I guess it'd be page 4, that shows the job seekers per vacancy. And you can just, you don't even have to read the numbers, you can just see it overall. Back in 2009, obviously there was 7.5 job seekers per vacancy, all the way up to now where we're looking at, 0.4 job seekers per vacancy in Houston County. And that's not abnormal or different. Hey, I like that song.
Sorry.
It's not abnormal for our region by any means, but I think it's just striking to see that there's also a large growth in vacancies in Houston County. So as that growth goes up and the individuals go down, you're getting more and more and more of an issue here in Houston County. So again, probably not a surprise to you, but when you see it kind of visually, it's a little bit more striking. Another thing that is kind of noteworthy is that you do have about 55% of the individuals living in Houston County traveling outside of Houston County for work. And that's pretty striking if you compare that to the rest of the region and the rest of the state by far. But I'm sure, most are going into Wisconsin and then some Iowa, Rochester, and the surrounding areas, but that's a pretty high number. And honestly, I don't know that there's necessarily a solution that workforce development is necessarily working on, but we certainly work with the individuals that we work with to advocate for and help them find, employment that's local. And that's one of our missions, I guess, is to make sure that individuals know about the opportunities that are available right here in Houston County. The labor force participation rate is definitely lower with diverse populations, and that's, again, not anything different, but it's definitely more striking in Houston County. There's some pretty significant disparities in employment and education for non-white individuals in Houston County. So if you look, there's a number of graphs throughout here that show individuals of various races and their employment participation, as well as their education attainment. And those all kind of show a little bit of, or kind of a lot of disparity, I guess, in both employment and education. Again, not different from the rest of the state, but probably a little bit more striking in this area. However, you have a lot less diversity, so it's hard to say, because with those numbers being so low, it kind of skews the numbers a little bit. Then, kind of towards the middle of the packet, it talks about employment projections. And one thing I thought that was interesting, I'm looking, I don't even know what page, I apologize, but it's a graph at the bottom here that shows job vacancies by industry. And one thing is that Houston County has a lot of diversity in terms of industry. And so of all the postings that are available right now, there is a majority kind of in healthcare and manufacturing, but it's really not as big of a majority as you would think, or that is in other counties in southeast Minnesota. And so there's a lot of diversity you can just see in the colors. Many different industries and many different positions in all those different industries available. So that's kind of a positive things in terms of economic growth and in terms of filling vacancies, because the more diversity you have in positions, the more availability or the more opportunity there are for individuals that have different education backgrounds and different training and that sort of thing. Another graph that I found striking, I guess, for lack of a better word, for Houston County is this one that shows regional employment projections at the bottom here. And the reason that I find it interesting is because the blue color is the number of positions that are going to be new in the next 10 years. And the orange color is those that are going to be from exit openings. So again, you're dealing with a retiring population and that sort of thing, but the numbers are quite high in terms of the numbers that are going to be available for job vacancies that are due solely to exits versus new positions being created. Yeah, and then just kind of one other thing that is, again, I look at it as an opportunity, especially for the job seekers that we're working with and those that we're sending to training and helping obtain employment, is that 67% of the jobs in Houston County require a high school diploma or less. And that might seem high, but it's actually, again, kind of an opportunity for individuals. There's more opportunity for individuals that don't have a college degree or don't have a 2-year degree or whatnot. And so, again, I kind of look at that as a positive thing. That's a lot higher than some other counties in our area. And again, with that diversity of all the different occupations that are available, there are opportunities available. The page here that shows the regional occupations and demand, this is all information that's really important for high school students to know. And so part of our work is making sure that we're connected with the high schools and sharing some of this information, because it does show all the different opportunities that are available for both high school graduates, as well as having some college or an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree or higher. And these are all, sort of high wage, in demand careers. And it really just shows the number of different opportunities available for somebody, and the diversity of opportunities available, that you don't have to go and get that college, you don't have to necessarily go and get a 4-year degree to have a good career. And so I think that's one thing that's really important for us to be sharing with the schools. And so there's a number of positions on here that just require some education, or some post-secondary education, I should say, as well as that high school. Heavy and tractor trailer truck drivers is a very high one in this area, teacher assistants, office clerks, etc. So that's another interesting chart. I don't know how much you guys like numbers, so there's a lot in here, but the last thing that I saw that kind of, I guess, poked out at me was your workforce participation by gender. You actually have 56% of your workforce population being female, which is again a little bit interesting for Houston County. So go ladies, I guess. All right, so I know that's a really quick overview of labor market information, but I'm happy to come back, answer any questions, or dive in a little deeper after I'm finished with the rest of the presentation here. So the next slide on the PowerPoint, I'm kind of back at the PowerPoint presentation here, is just an overview of what our program areas are. And again, we have 65 different funding streams, so at any given day we have also 65 different kind of programs and populations that we serve, but these are sort of our main 4 program areas. So we have the welfare reform programs, which I'm going to talk about in detail a little bit more. The youth side of things, so we have a very robust youth and young adult program which serves ages 14 to 24. And then the dislocated worker program, which is serving individuals who have been laid off through no fault of their own, and that's has state and federal funding along with that, and we help them get back into training or help them with employment, that sort of thing. And then the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which I mentioned earlier, and that has funding in it for both youth as well as our adult programs. So it's kind of just this overall umbrella of adult programming under WIOA. So to talk more specifically about the welfare reform, this is individuals who are on the Minnesota Family Investment Program, MFIB, or the Diversionary Work Program, DWP, and referred to us for services. So not everybody is referred to us for services, but if they are, if they have to have employment services, they are referred to us. It's a 60-month program. They must have a child 18 or under, and there's various services that are listed there underneath that. But basically our goal is to help them find employment, help them get into training, help them upskill to help them better their lives. And I did pull some specific numbers for Houston County. We are serving around 60 individuals currently today on that program in employment and training. Again, so there might be a number of others that are on the program but not necessarily being served through us. And of that number, 19% are actually in training currently. So they're either two are in GED training and the others are in post-secondary training. So 19% are in training, and then 63% of them are either working part-time or full-time currently. So out of the individuals that we're serving here, 82% of them are either working or in training currently, which is a pretty high number for our region. That's great actually. The others, I'm assuming, are working on employment, working on finding jobs, and working on work readiness skills, working on soft skills, that sort of thing, with our career planners in the Houston office. All right, so then youth services, again, ages 14 to 24. We have a number of programs listed there. I won't go into those in detail, but 2 kind of special funding streams that we have in the youth program include the scholarship funds as well as our work experience funds. So we do have training and tuition assistance available in the youth program as well as some of our adult programs where individuals can come to us if they need assistance with training or education, tuition. And it doesn't have to be post-secondary necessarily. Sometimes, we're doing career pathways training, for example. That's a niche of ours that we do, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But sometimes it can be just a short-term training activity to get them into a career quickly. Other times it's GED training or whatnot. So there's a lot of flexibility in those training funds. And then the other kind of special pot of funding we have is work experience dollars. So we're actually required to spend 20% of our funding on work experience for youth. And so what that is where we basically reach out to an employer, and it's based on the, kind of the interests of the youth and their skill set, and, like, for example, if they're interested in working at a mechanic shop, we'll give a call to that local mechanic and ask them if they'll be willing to take a youth on for a training period of time. So we pay their wages for that training period. Kind of helps them get their foot in the door, gives them a little bit of skill, gives that employer an opportunity to kind of test them out before they decide to hire them. So that's kind of a niche that we serve as well in our youth programs. And then dislocated worker there, again, individuals who have lost their jobs through no fault of their own. This is paid for by a payroll tax through the state of Minnesota. And so those services, are across our entire state, and they should be available for anybody that's been laid off. people come into our office and get support with career planning, get support with employment, helping them get back into training or giving them some skill development and that sort of thing. We are seeing a little bit of an uptick in dislocated workers coming into our offices just in this last 2 quarters, I would say. And, you know, it's kind of a sign of what may be to come. You know, there's a lot of talk about a possible recession coming, but we definitely are seeing that those numbers increase. It's not necessarily the large layoffs or mass numbers of people coming in, but more kind of the ones and twos here and there coming in our doors. One of the things that John had actually asked me to talk about was the farming perspective and what we're doing to help farmers in our region. And one of the things that we did was we modified our policy letter for the dislocated worker program. Basically what that means is under the dislocated worker program prior, farmers and farm families were not eligible for the dislocated worker program based on the eligibility and based on the rules of the state. But locally we have enough control where we can change our policy. We can change just our local policy to be able to serve that population. And so that's one thing that we've done to try to help individuals who are suffering from either farm losses or just loss of employment, or even how we wrote the eligibility is even if they've had just decreased income in their farm family. And so we've been able to serve a number of them under our dislocated worker program, which we hadn't been able to do prior. So that's just one thing that's nice about having kind of that local control and being able to approve the policy letter through the Joint Powers Board to be able to serve those individuals. And then the last one here is the WIOA, again, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And this is mostly serving unemployed and underemployed adults, and they must be income eligible. It has a heavy emphasis on serving veterans, so we serve a number of veterans throughout our region. And it has training and support funding available in there as well, so for career planning, et cetera. And then we do have, so again, with all of the different funding streams that we have available, we do have a number of sort of specialized programs that might be for a specific population, or might be for a specific county, or might be for a specific training. One of the niches that we have is really our career pathways training. So that's something that we do very well. We have a long history of career pathways training. And so what career pathways training is, just kind of in a nutshell, is short-term career laddering opportunities for individuals to get a career in a high-wage, in-demand career. And so what we try to do is help individuals, you know, get short-term training opportunities that will get them into a job, you know, in a 6 to 8 week kind of time frame, and then kind of build that ladder from there. So one of our kind of perfect examples of a career pathway is our Bridges to Healthcare program. So that's for an individual, you know, kind of starting out. Normally they start with getting their CNA, and then they get a job, and they work in that job until they are ready to go back for their LPN. And then they'll go to school and work while they're getting their LPN, and then they'll go to school and work while they're getting their RN. So kind of multiple laddering opportunities. And we do have bridge programs or career pathways programs in a number of sectors across the region. So we have Bridges to Healthcare, we have manufacturing, we have construction and trades. We also have kind of a specialized grant in this region that's called the River Region Manufacturing Program, where we're actually teaching manufacturing skills courses. They're getting college credit, and they're also getting their basic skills in the it started out being in the 4 adult detention centers in Goodhue, Wabasha, Winona, and Houston County. And after we started that program, we found out quite quickly that the populations in those adult detention centers was a lot lower than we thought, or than it was when we wrote the proposal. So now what we're actually doing is we're doing a lot of what we call external classes. So we're offering classes out in the community in those 4 counties for individuals that have a criminal background. So instead of focusing just on those that are incarcerated, we're also focusing on those that have any sort of background that's a barrier for them in employment. And so that program just got refunded, actually, so we're going to be doing at least another 2 years of classes throughout those 4 counties for those individuals. And again, they get a college credit, they get their basic skills education, they get help with employment. We have a number of employers on board that have, you know, volunteered to at least give an interview and hire some of the individuals that go through the program, and they get their OSHA, you know, OSHA 10, they're getting forklift, all these different skills. So, yeah.
What's your name?
Do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, excuse me, how do you reach out to those that are not incarcerated? I mean, how is it publicized, or how do you find
Yeah.
them?
We've been partnering really closely with the county probation, county parole, human services organizations in those 4 counties. We've actually had some great success and, you know, a lot of support for it. So we have a class coming up in Wabasha in December, and then I'm not sure when the next Houston County class is, but we're kind of, you know, spread them out throughout those 4 counties.
So what are the 4 counties?
Goodhue, Wabasha, Winona, and Houston.
Okay.
So it's the river region
Okay.
group. Yep.
Earlier you said though, that Winona wasn't part, but for this they are?
Winona is not part of our workforce region. That's a great question. They're not part of our workforce region, but we are doing some regional planning and regional initiatives, and that's one thing that we've done with them in terms of our regional efforts. Yeah. So it's actually kind of a neat partnership across boundaries in terms of our workforce area, but yeah, it just makes sense because we're neighbors and we do a lot
Sure.
together. So
I want to bring up too that Allison, our EDA person, and Ginny were on the farm program on NPR.
yeah.
And Allison's been working real close with you.
Yeah, yep. And that interview, it actually opened up a lot of doors. We've been banging our heads against the wall, to be honest, to try to find different funding streams and different programs that these individuals can be eligible for, workforce development specifically. And we haven't had a lot of success, but with that interview has come a number of other interviews and a number of other individuals coming forward and, you know, kind of bringing light to this, you know, picture. And so we're really hopeful that we're going to be making some advances and finding some programs for, and when I'm talking about that funding and programs, I'm talking about state, you know, workforce development programs, because again, that population doesn't fit into a lot of the bubbles of funding that are available through DEED and other sources. So we're kind of being creative and serving them under dislocated worker, but we're hoping to even expand those services even further. So.
It's opened the door.
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's opened the door.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yep. And, oh,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
There's a lot of information here.
Yeah.
How do you get that? Surveys mostly? Or how do you collect all this?
The labor market information?
Yep.
So if you look at the bottom of the front page, Mark Schultz is actually our regional analyst.
Yep.
And if you were interested in getting, you know, a specific presentation on labor market information, he would come and do that too. He serves our whole region. But all the information is available on that website. So the min.gov deed/data, and all these different charts and reports are all different charts that you can pull up from that site.
Right. But how does, okay, what I'm asking is how do you get these numbers? Do you do surveys with employers
yep.
or employees or?
Yes, so it's a combination of a number of things. It is surveys of employers, it's surveys of job seekers, it's the unemployment information,
Okay.
demographic census information.
Yep.
You know, there's a number, the SLEDS information from the K-12 system, post-secondary graduation information. So it's pulling from, you know, any number of different data sources.
Okay.
Yeah, so each of them, you know, if you had a specific question on one of them, you know, each of them are pulling from different data sets.
Okay. All right.
Without searching through this all, do you, excuse me, have any information on high school graduates that completely leave the area?
No, not specifically. There is some information in here about, you know, your high school graduation rates, and then there's information in here about the number of individuals that are commuting, but there's not necessarily a specific data set that shows how many are leaving the area.
We had Truth and Taxation last night, and we were discussing the number of people who, as you mentioned earlier, 55% work out of the county,
Right.
and trying to create reasons for them to stay in the county and so forth. And I got to thinking about, I have 2 daughters, and they're both in the cities. And then I thought about the group of friends my daughter that went to La Crescent had. They're all in the cities. And it's just, I don't know how one addresses that. I mean, in one respect, it's not a problem because they're gainfully employed in an area they are enjoying, but on the other hand, you'd like to see some of that talent
Right.
stay local. But
Right. Yeah, and I do know that there's some kind of preliminary studies out there for our region specifically, and some of the data shows that individuals are definitely leaving at 18, 19, 20 years old, but oftentimes are returning. Not necessarily to their hometown, but to their home county or home region. At 28, 29, 30. So there is kind of a lot of data supporting the return.
the return.
It's just that that younger 20s population that tends to be leaving, at least for a short amount of time. One of the things that we are doing though is this Bluff Country Collaborative. The other thing I wanted to talk about that's sort of specific to Houston County. It's a collaborative between ourselves, WDI, CETA, and then the Southeast Service Co-op and the 8 school districts in Fillmore and Houston County. And the mission of that group is really to kind of grow local and keep local, right? So we're trying to help high school students understand the different opportunities available to them in Houston and Fillmore counties. There's a heavy emphasis on work-based learning and trying to get them out in the community and see the different employers and see the different job opportunities that are available to them. And our employer group that's kind of weighed in on some of our decisions has that focus. They want to grow from within, but they also want them to stay within the county, and so that's one of the missions of that group. So that's been interesting to be able to kind of grow. We're now at the point where we have hired a person, I think the posting closed, but they haven't actually hired the person yet to serve those 8 counties to build those work-based learning opportunities for students out in the community. So it's kind of a step, at least in the direction of, because one thing that we heard right when we started this Bluff Country Collaborative is high school students didn't have a clue what was available in their own backyard or across the street, So that's one of the things that we're doing with that. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information. Just want to see if there's anything else specific. There isn't anything else specific that I wanted to make sure I covered, but I did include a few handouts that are specific to programs, and then what we call our playbook, which is kind of our strategic plan or what's going on across the region in terms of the different sectors and the different career pathways training and that sort of thing. So I'll just leave that with you, but happy to dive into anything else deeper or answer any questions. Is there anything else you wanted to know about?
Just one question.
Yeah.
You talked about in the past the job applicant numbers and how they've dropped down to 0.4, and then the job availability and how that's gone up. Do you have a scale as far as the wage scale that those jobs are?
Yeah, yep, that's in here too. Off the top of my head, without kind of diving into this again, I did look at the increase of wage, and the increase of wage in the last 10 years in Houston County is very competitive to the rest of the region. So that's the first thing that I look at, just in to kind of gauge if the positions are staying competitive with what the needs of the job seekers are, if there's so few job seekers. So that is one positive thing. The wages in general, though, in Houston County are much lower than the rest of the region and the rest of the state. I think that's par for the course a little, but I also think that that's something that could be looked at. One thing though that to kind of compare it, I suppose it's a little easier for me because I look at this stuff every day, right? But if you look at the like the median household income, and then there's also a cost of living calculator, and really what
Where's that
In-
at, Jenny?
that's what I'm looking for here. The cost of living. Let me find it first here, and then I'll. So there's household income here about halfway through, but what I'm looking for is the cost of living estimates. So again, it's kind of halfway through. Basic needs, cost of living estimates, 2018 at the bottom here.
On the bottom left side of it,
Yeah, and one thing, you know,
about halfway through
This one?
this one.
Yeah,
One
this,
with
this
mail.
one here, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm sorry. Okay,
I think the overall, I'd have to go back to another chart to find
well,
out.
median household, okay.
Yep, but the median household income, I think, was around 15
The-
dollars per hour. And this, you know, so this shows you what the cost of living would actually have to be. So if you're and it's based on two adults
Can you point to what you're looking at?
down
Right
here
there,
at the
okay,
bottom.
okay.
Yep, sorry. Basic needs, cost of living estimates, table 27.
Okay,
The typical family, 2 adults, 1 working full-time and 1 working part-time. And then all the different costs that go into that. You know, so in this calculator, you know, that's just one situation, but you can go to this cost of living tool and put in any sort of family size or whatever. And what's interesting is just to look at what the hourly wage required is. So for that family situation, they would require $15.23 per hour in order just to make the basic needs of that family. So if you're talking about, you know, being competitive and making sure that the wages are in line, that's one of the first things that we look at in terms of the cost of living in the area too, because that's going to be, even though the wages are lower in Houston County, your cost of living is going to be much lower as well. Does that help?
and the family is considered, 1 working full-time and 1 part-time.
Correct. Right. Yeah, and that's I mean, if you're at all interested in numbers, that cost of living tool is one that's kind of fun to play around with. It varies vastly across the state, as I'm sure you can imagine, as well as the household. You know, when you look at the household size and every child that you add to that household, and the cost, the expense with childcare and all of that, and the childcare cost across the state is much different as well. So.
On the previous page,
Okay. Yes.
it has median household income by race.
Yeah, this is one I circled because I thought it must be a little skewed, just based on the numbers. It must have a low number in that reporting.
There must be one millionaire.
That's what I'm
of a-
thinking, yeah. And they're, you know, they're you know, minority, I would assume, because the white alone median household income is $56,939, and this one that's some other race is $89,000. So way higher than the median income for the county, and I thought that was interesting too.
I think,
You must have a millionaire somewhere.
yeah, I think the important part, the median, since it's a primarily white population, so the 56.9 for Houston County. The latest figure I saw was nationwide, it's about 61. So again, Houston County's considerably lower in that respect.
Table 24 on the next page shows Houston County compared to Minnesota. Both median household income,
there. Yeah,
average
thank
household
you.
income, and then average family income across the line
Which one are you looking at?
Number
there. Number
20.
24.
24.
Table
Yeah.
24.
Oh, here we are.
medium,
Median household income is the $56,837.
and then the Minnesota.
Yeah.
And, yep, Minnesota's $65,699.
So we are lower.
But then the cost of living is about $47,500 for Houston and $55,500 for Minnesota.
Yeah. So that kind of is a wash.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to depend, you know, on the family situation and whatnot. But and there, again, the disparity issue is something to be looking at as well, just in terms of educational attainment and employment for individuals of a diverse background is a lot different in the county. But the numbers are so much lower that it's hard to track that in all of the charts. Other questions or?
I'll be reading this page by page later, right? I'm gonna try and do a report like this each time I go to a meeting.
No.
That's why I keep it brief.
It's all good information, though.
It is, very good. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Ginny?
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for
you.
doing what you do.
We appreciate that, yes.
That was, I don't know, it was laying here. I didn't get one.
I didn't get one.
You said something earlier.
What
I'm
did-
following along, I just didn't know where you guys got your
Oh, you
packets.
She's probably got another one.
Didn't you get a folder?
No?
I'm sorry.
Ginny? Ginny?
Oh, he's got one.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, okay. Never
Now
mind.
I got reading materials.
Yes.
Wonder what they're talking about.
Sorry, I thought I said enough up here.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, approving the claims and license center disbursements, and then the following personnel.
Just the claims.
Pardon?
Just the claims.
Just the claims. Need a motion to approve the claims.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on to action items. Now, some of these action items, I think, have already been reviewed by the Personnel Committee, so. Number one, consider the approval of a case aid to income maintenance for public health and human services for 2020 budget and initiate a search. Did you,
I lost my pen.
what'd you lose?
My pen.
Oh, here,
I
is
assume that's what that look was.
Here's an extra one.
that yours?
Where was it? Are we good?
Mhm.
A nice try.
Chair Walter, you are correct. The Personnel Committee,
No, it
it's
was
on, okay, thank you. The Personnel Committee did meet both on items number 1 and number 2, and there was a consensus of a recommendation to the board to approve both of those positions. Several questions were asked. John was there, Bethany was there, and they provided considerable detail.
So basically, we need a motion on number 1.
I just make a motion to consider the case aid hire. Initiate a search.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Further discussion?
And this is a position that is funded.
Am I on here?
Yep,
The position is partially funded.
this is the partial one.
Yeah, we receive approximately 50% reimbursement for any of our positions in income maintenance. These are folks that work closely with Ginny and her organization, who have an office here in town also. Not necessarily this specific position, but within income maintenance, they work closely with WDI.
This is also budgeted, correct?
It's in our proposed
2020 budget.
budget. It's not in the 19 budget.
No.
But it's in addition to what we originally got, right? Our original proposed budget did not have this in it.
Our original proposed budget that we submitted did have this position in it.
In it.
The original
It
2020
was still in
budget.
the to be approved category. Yes. So
This is the $33,000
Yes.
one.
Yeah,
Correct.
So the very first sheets I got did not have that in it.
correct.
It does now. So this is an addition from what we originally talked about.
I think it's been there all along.
Commissioner Burns, are you speaking of the budget documents received from Public Health and Human Services?
I'm speaking to the 100 and whatever number of pages that I got from Carol, and then this is the budget, plus there's a 33,000 for this and something and something. So it wasn't in the original budget, but it's added now, correct?
It was included, the $33,000 in that, in the levy calculation sheet,
Right.
Mhm.
so it was included.
But it's an
there.
additional item,
Yes.
not part of the original levy.
It was separated out because it wasn't approved
Wasn't
yet.
approved.
Right.
But the numbers were in the original.
I think, as
I
I
don't think
recall,
so.
the impact of this position, the $33,000 that is necessary to be covered by levy, was considered in that budget number, but the whole cost and expense weren't in the budget because we need to bring it to the board and have it approved. So it was something that we were planning new for 2020. Is that
All
a
I'm
fair-
saying is that I had the numbers, and then this 33,000 is an addition to what we had talked about.
Right, in the budget document.
Right. Because if it wasn't, I know it hasn't been approved, but it wasn't in the overall budget calculation. It's an add-on, the way I'm looking at it.
Well, the total amount of the salary cost needs to be added, and the total amount of the reimbursements for the two positions need to be added.
With a
And
net,
that amount-
net increase of $33,000 to the budget. That's all I was asking.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on to number 2. Consider approval of the additional public health nurse to family health unit for 2020 budget and initiate a search. This is another one that was covered by personnel, I believe. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Commissioner, that both of these were covered
Okay.
by the Personnel Committee, and there was, as I said, lengthy discussion.
Okay.
And questions were asked and satisfied, is my understanding, by both, by John, and I'm not sure if Bethany contributed at that point, but John responded. You want to give a quick overview?
Sure. This public health nurse position is focused on our family health unit, so that would be programs like WIC, maternal and child health, immunization, family home visiting, those types of things. And with the addition of our family home visiting grant that we've spoken about, as well as the opportunity to provide kind of a collaborative approach to a psychiatric clinic 1 day a week in Caledonia, we didn't have the FTEs available to meet those needs or to utilize the available revenue to meet those needs. So that's why we are projecting that the position would be no impact to the levy, or no additional impact to the levy.
Is this also filling a vacancy from the nurse that left last May?
No. This would be a new position. The nurse that left last May, we changed that position to be a social worker.
Yeah.
And that person is working in our home and community-based services. So that's primarily waiver case management.
Okay.
And we have a combination of nurses and social workers that are doing that work. This position isn't an existing position. It's proposed new for 2020.
Okay.
And I'll clarify the reason you have on your agenda C41/C42, depending upon the pool of applicants. If we were to have an applicant who, successful applicant who came to us with an RN without a PHN, public health certificate, we would be offering that position with an expectation towards them gaining that certification within a specific period of time. And so we will be advertising it under both grids because we just aren't sure what audience we will attract. We could attract a PHN with the certificate in hand. However, I will say that is possibly from an internal applicant, but possibly not. So we need that kind of flexibility in our hiring.
I think that goes also to what Ginny shared with you and just kind of a labor market shortage. We're seeing that obviously with our pools as well. And these are fairly specific skilled positions, so we typically haven't seen real huge pools anyway, and just kind of some of the demographic shift we're seeing in the region also contribute to that.
So I need a motion to consider that approval.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion.
And this is the funded, grant-funded one too.
Yeah, it will receive funding from a variety of different
Right.
programs across.
But that's where you said it's budget neutral, really.
Yeah,
It's
correct.
one hand washes the other.
Just a comment and a question, I guess. After these positions are filled, do you anticipate any additions other than resignations or dismissals? Are we staffed to the point where we aren't going to be adding positions in 2020?
We've done our best to project what our needs are going to be in 2020. We don't have an anticipation that there's something, in my pocket for later in 2020. We spend a great deal of time kind of trying to project what we think our needs are and what trends are. It's kind of a challenge because you're doing that in the summer of 19 to try and predict what's going to be happening a year and a half hence. Barring any unforeseen things that are coming up, no, I think this would meet our needs.
I understand your challenge. We also have one, and that's to take care of our Houston County population the best we can, but to continue to look at what it costs to take care of it. So
That's why, we work really hard to look at how we can structure funding strategies to offset the cost of staffing to the best of our ability.
thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 3, consider approval of the 2020 salary adjustments for the non-represented and confidential employees. And I think we have a few sheets on that. These are, I don't think I have to read those. We're doing the IT ones, 2 people.
Well, it's essentially what we've been
Okay.
able to do is based on the discussion we've had in the work group sessions, is the pay grid schedule that all of the non-represented confidential employees fall under. And it was one pay scale. Last year it was split into 2 because one group followed one labor union at 2.75 and one group followed the other at 3%. So I've asked Carol to consolidate that back onto one pay chart with those appropriate rates for the line positions that were at those different rates. And so a one motion to approve the 2020 non-union appointed and elected official wage grid is what's needed as the motion.
So we need a motion to approve the non-representative and the confidential employees at this time. And the 2 points at 2.75?
It is generally 2.75 with the exception of the C41, C42 bands, which would be at 3%.
And that's the IT? No.
That's the 2 IT
To
individuals?
IT, the nurses, and the drop site.
They're all getting temporary.
That's at 3%?
And
And what is the reason that's different? I'm just curious.
Commissioner, that tracks the AFSCME scale, and they are banded equivalent, and their pay has historically tracked that scale.
Is the drop site full-time person or the part-time people?
Part.
These
Both.
are all part-time persons. The recycling center leads are that are there are on the in the AFSCME contract, covered by that contract. And the drop site folks are generally speaking 67-day.
Casual employees.
That's the 60s. And what's their current rate of pay?
For
The drop site people.
drop site supervisor, wage scale ranges from 1419 at step 1 up to target at 1767.
And this is part-time people,
Yes.
14 to 17.
I will say that a part-time does not come with other benefits, so some of the other costs of your benefit roll-ups aren't there. I will also say that we have a market issue in getting applicants. I wouldn't maybe a market issue isn't what I would say, but we have a challenge, if you will, in continuing to attract applicants. I pulled them out these for
So we're talking about drop site and part-time, the 2 IT people, that's it?
Nurses.
And the nurses, and that's it?
For the 275, correct.
I thought that was 3,
Excuse me, for the 3, pardon me.
Yeah.
I misspoke.
and that's it. I mean, the confidential ones aren't included in that?
Now, confidential are at the
They follow the
2.7.
ASME.
That would be the 3 confidential, Carol, Tess, and Andy. All right? The-
It depends.
Sorry, I was trying to reprint it out here for the board. The printer's not cooperating, so let me print it in my
Needs
office.
paper.
We have
do it.
3 exempt confidential staff.
Okay.
That is your finance director, your HR director, and your IT director. We have
Can you go grab these? Printer behind my desk.
3 it is 3, isn't it? Yes, 3 confidential employees who are, for lack of a better phrase, your staff line workers, if you will. That would be Ann in the HR office and the 2 clerical techs in the county attorney's office. Those confidentials are automatically included and treated as the AFSCME people. They are kind of pulled out of that unit just for the purpose of the ability to participate, if you will, and have access to labor negotiations. For all other purposes, they are in the contract. So when you ask me, does this include the 3, I'm not sure which 3 you're referring to, Commissioner Johnson, because there's 2 sets of 3. But if you're referring to the 3 exempt employees that are directors,
Well, I'm just trying to get a
Yes.
handle on who we're all talking about. That's what I'm trying to find out.
yep, I hope that was helpful.
So do you know who we're talking about now? I have the original sheet that we got in workshop, and that includes our 2 IT, Luke and Shane, the nurses, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nurses, and then it includes Carol, Tess, and Andy.
And they're all at 275 or all at
3.
3?
Though,
They're all
no,
at 3.
No,
They're
Those
at
are
what
due-
we decide to set them at.
the last list is at 275, the last of
Yes,
that list.
And
recommended.
okay, now that's what I'm trying to get at. The last list is at
Last
275,
list.
but the other ones are 3.
The,
Just the IT.
Just the IT is
Just
at
the
3?
IT were recommended 3. The nurses were at 2.75, and the other
No,
ones at,
no, they're 3 too.
oh, wow.
I mean 3, not 3, 2.
Okay, so you have a copy of the wage
yes.
scale?
so
So
the,
the first 2, the C41 and the C42, are at 3%. They're the IT, Shane and Luke. In the nurses section, the C41 and the C42, they're at 3%. And the drop site employees and the temporary employees are at 3%. All of the other lines are at 2.75.
Okay.
Okay. You got that?
Basically, because it
So-
would be considered more professional, which aligns with the MAPE settlement for
Mhm.
2.75.
I get that, yeah. because they're non-union, not represented.
Right.
I do get some expression from the unions people that they're the ones that pay the dues, negotiate the increases, yet these other people get it but they don't pay the dues. That's a tough one. I see that point, but
At the same time,
Negotiate as a union.
at the same time, you're not allowed to be in the union
right.
because of the
Actually,
position.
that's incorrect.
Well-
All of those persons on that list that you have, with possibly the exception of your casual employees, and those at the very bottom, all could be in various unions. In the state of Minnesota, you can have a confidential unit of, you can have a Minnesota Nurses Association unit.
So they could form a union.
So the mere fact that your IT has access to confidential information doesn't forbid them from forming a separate, and I don't wanna
Yep.
pull them out per se, but any of those groups doesn't preclude them from forming, a separate unit on that.
But they can't be in the same union, they'd have to start their own union?
They would have to start, they'd have to petition the Bureau of Mediation Services and initiate that process, that's correct. And there is quite a lengthy process that they would have to go through. I'm not saying that for any particular reason, other than just to clarify the last statement that was made.
I guess the one I have the biggest problem with is the part-time. We're well above minimum wage as far as that's concerned.
You're talking
And
about
struggling to fill them.
That's fine, struggling to fill them, but it's still part-time.
And the way I look at it is that we're
Call it
talking
what you will.
3% on a considerably lower wage versus 3% on a considerably higher wage. We're talking a bigger increase per year.
Oh, yeah.
But we need to be fair too. I get that.
I also think, commissioners, if I may, some of those jobs are tough to fill because they are not, they can be very strenuous as far as a lot of lifting. They can be less desirable because of the aesthetics they work in. It can be, we also try to retain the folks we have, so we don't have to do a lot of retraining because that's costly then too. You have to double your, how many folks you have on site when you have to go through regular training. So you have to, I think one might want to balance all those other factors. Working at the drop site comes with, you have to do a certain amount of training because of some of the hazards they're exposed to and the way we expect them to handle some of those materials, as well as their ability to interact with the public in a positive manner.
So answer me another question with regard to the drop site. I keep leaning back to that. I look at step 1, 520 hours, step 2, 520 hours. So in 2019, somebody worked 520 hours. Then they're done. Are they done for the year, or do they start over with another 520?
The hours that are listed on the schedule, and I look to Carol to correct me if she feels I'm misinterpreting this. The hours that are on the schedule that you have for that pay grid are the collective hours they need to work towards gaining enough time to get to the next step, and that is cumulatively over the years of their employment. Does that make? They don't start all over at the beginning of each year. So, for instance, if we have an employee that has been our part-time employee, say, for 10 years, they've likely accumulated enough hours that they are somewhere along that line.
The the 67-day employee, that's 536 hours, so they start at the 1419 current scale. Then the last 36 hours of that 67 days, they go up to 1509. When they're done with 67 days, are they done for the year, or do they turn around and start over?
That's why, they're actually a casual employee who
Yeah.
works less than 14 hours a week.
Okay.
So they can work more than 67 days as
All right.
long as they're under 14 hours or 14 hours or less per week.
Okay.
And that's what the drop site employees are. Typically, they work 14 hours a pay period.
Okay.
We look to follow two different sets of rules and balance that as best they can with drop sites. And one is a threshold to being retirement contribution qualified, and the other to being whether you would then be considered in unit into AFSCME. And that's that 14-hour per week threshold. So there are two different, you hear us talk about both of those in it.
But this is still part-time, so if they're working 14 hours a week, I have to assume they have other jobs. That's just my assumption. Or they're retired
Or they're
and they do this for
retired.
supplement.
Per pay period.
Per pay
Per
period.
pay period. 2
So it's
weeks,
14 hours per pay period?
yes, is what they typically work.
Right, typically.
It's
the
just
drop
on
site employee
on
works
Saturdays that they're
works
working.
a Wednesday and a Wednesday,
Yeah.
or a Saturday and a Saturday.
Mhm.
Thursday and Saturday in
Yeah, for
La
the
Crescent.
Depends on where you are, yeah.
Okay,
It's still part-time in my, well, okay. Haven't burned that stick.
so do you want to consider a motion to approve the salary adjustments for non-represented and confidential employees as we have been discussing? And at the recommended. Anyway, we need a motion in order to move forward here. And we need to make these decisions today so Carol can redo the budget, or, these are already budgeted.
It's already in the budget.
It's already
for
in the
the
budget.
2020 budget, correct?
In the proposal.
Yes.
And this is for the, I just wanna make this clear. Part-time drop site supervisors, nurses,
IT.
and IT.
And the three,
The two IT people.
two IT, and the three confidential at the bottom.
Carol.
Carol, Tess, and Andy.
No, I was told that's 275.
That is yes.
Yeah.
But that's.
It's
how
all
the
on the
wage-
same
that's
chart.
how the
Okay,
wage
so
scale
they're gonna be
is
275 and the rest are gonna be 3.
And that's how the wage scale is calculated.
Okay.
Wage scale.
The others that have not been mentioned that are in that D61 category, or D61 classification, are the assistant county attorneys. So there are more, they're also non-represented.
And the assistant county
As
attorneys
Carol
would be in the
said,
275?
Correct.
C42 and up, C42 and above the line are your IT folks, along with the grid down below for your nurses. Then you have those other lines there that are the balance of your non-represented employees, which include the 3 directors you've mentioned. It also includes your assistant county attorneys.
My feelings are if we gotta get through this hump right here, but my concern is we need to have a cap on some of these higher end ranges. Because a 275 on a $105,000 pay scale is considerably more than one on a like for the IT guys that are, what, 30,000, 40,000. I think we need to look at that in the future. And this is not to despair anybody in the quality of work they do. It's just that at this rate we keep going, we're going to have some pretty high salaries out there, and that's a concern as far as cost. That's where I'm coming from.
I would just add to Commissioner's comments that Tess and Carol will recall that I sat down with them last week and talked specifically about what Eric just brought up. I think we need to do some study and create a ceiling for positions. Again, I'll talk about this when we get to the elected also. We had Truth and Taxation last night, and the discussion was how many people got tax increases that shocked them. How many are wondering, when is this going to slow down? And talking about people driving out of the county. The Social Security increase is 1.6%. The county's contribution to PERA is 7.5%. I'd challenge someone to bring me 10 people in the county whose company is contributing 7.5% to a retirement program. They would have a self-funded program, put your own money in. So it just, I can't sit here in good conscience and tell a Social Security recipient getting 1.6% that just got a tax increase on their property tax that we're going to have some more people above 100,000 in Houston County. It doesn't factor for me. So I think we need to have a discussion on ceilings. And again, I guess echoing what Eric said, in no way is that an indication that we're not happy with performance. We aren't thinking that we have people that aren't pulling their weight. That's not a factor. I think again, we just have to, well, the information we got this morning again, look where Houston County fits on these scales. I don't really care what they pay in Dodge County. I don't care what they pay in any other county. I care about what Houston County residents can pay versus what their household income is or their situation. So there.
Our other alternative is to not do the 3 or the 2.75, to put it at something else. But we need to move forward on some kind of decision here, and we can't do a wage study and a cap on wages at this time.
No, we need to get over the hump here.
We have to get over, yes, we gotta move forward on this right now. So we need a motion to, and we can do them separate. We could do the non-represented and the confidential. Now there's actually 3 categories, isn't there? The 3%,
I'll make a motion
okay, we need a motion.
to approve the 3% and the 2.75% wage increases as presented on the basis that, from the perspective of non-representation, it's the fair it's a fair proposal from that perspective, and to keep everybody that we've got working for us here so that we don't lose people to other counties because of our pay inequity. So I'll make that a motion to approve what we've been presented.
I'll second it. Further discussion?
I would ask that we vote by roll.
Okay.
Discussion or?
Any further discussion, or we'll call for the vote?
Well, I just want to reiterate, I think we need to look at this in the next year here, and come up with a plan or something to address, the disparities. Like I say, it's the lower ones, it's not such a big deal. The bigger ones, it is a big deal, but it's not for, but I understand they have a higher responsibility too, and they have training to go to and stuff too, but that's all I want to reiterate. We need to look at this again this year.
Well, I'd add to that the Personnel Committee should take this on as our project next year.
Yep.
Roll call vote?
Okay, District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4.
Yes.
4 yeses recorded.
Okay, motion passed. Okay, now we do need to do the elected. Well, before we move on to the elected, we also need to deal with our administrator, or did he go underneath the 2.75?
I'm separate category. so-
Originally, we had him under the 2.75, but he should actually be kept separate. Agreed? So we need a motion to approve our administrator, Jeff, either at the 2.75 and start putting him in banding, or put him as part of the discussion for personnel next year. So I need a motion for our administrator salary.
Make a motion for the 2.75.
I'll second it. Further discussion?
I personally feel that at this point, the first year has been I think a learning year for both of us, for Jeff and for us, and therefore I would hold with the same wage for 2020 and consider any increase after the 2020 year.
Any other discussion? Let's have a roll call vote on this also.
Okay, District 1,
No.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4.
Yes. Now we'll move on to the elected personnel. And we have to do those individually by position. Oh, yeah, I got it on this one. We'll start with the county attorney. We have the numbers for what the 2.75 would be and what the 2019 position was.
I sent you a revised version of this. Did I hand it out already?
No.
2 copies.
Okay, I have it on my screen.
Revised,
You
then
can pass a couple more.
it's different than what you emailed?
Emailed
No,
last
it's what
night.
she emailed.
Yeah, I just emailed it last night just to clarify a couple things on there for the electeds. So what you have across the bottom column is their current 2019 salary rate. The numerically, 2.75, what that number would work out to be. In the past, the elected officials you've used the banding system as a reference to guide this decision. And so what you have there is where their current banding equivalent is, and then what would their, if they were to receive a step equivalent change, an annual step change as a regular employee would, what that banding equivalent would be, and if follow the steps, the final column is what that salary number would be.
I just want to point out that this is off a line here, just so.
Yeah, I know. It took
Yeah,
me a while to figure that
it
out.
shifted a little, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So right now, we're talking about the county attorney. We have to make a motion for each office.
My thing all along is to be fair across the board. I've expressed that before.
So I
So-
need a motion on the county attorney and a second, and then we can discuss.
Okay.
Before we get a motion, what is the state of Minnesota's cost of living currently? Or COLA?
166, I believe. Is not? We could ask the workforce development.
The Minnesota cost of living,
Yep.
well, it's gonna depend on the household, but a typical family, the 2 adults, 1 working full-time, 1 working part-time, is, 55,548.
What's the cost of living percentage? The percentage increase for the state
From last year,
from last year to this year?
that I don't know. Sorry.
Checking.
It's the COLA rate, right?
Yeah,
COLA rate.
which
What's the
is
COLA?
1.6.
I know you.
Yeah, I'm seeing 1.6, 1.7. Depending on the index. Change.
So Bob, you're thinking of doing just a COLA change instead of the 2.75?
I was just asking what it was.
Information, okay.
Just-
Nationally is in the 1.6 to 1.8, varying by month a little bit.
For cost of living,
CPI, Consumer Price Index.
CPI. Well, if you don't want to, do you want to do these as a group?
Oh, we could do it separate.
Okay, then let's have a motion for the county attorney, what you want to do. You want to go with just the cost of living raise, or the 2.75,
Well,
or the CPI is 1.6,
Or none of the above.
or none of the above?
Or a
You're
different
right.
number, yes.
I'd make the point that state employees have had a wage freeze for quite some time.
was it last year? He forego the increase?
Yes.
Yes.
Didn't offer to do it this year?
He ends up where he ends up.
We
Well,
have,
go ahead, Jim.
well, it's just, we have an election next November. I would rather, if we're going to grant an increase, I'd rather grant it after the election. That way the constituents can decide whether they want to grant an increase or not.
Yeah.
We haven't assessed any of these people. What are we granting the increase based on?
the position?
Here again is where we need to look at certain caps for the position. And now what if we get a new county attorney that gets elected next year? I don't know, I think Sam's up next year, whatever, but, no? 4? Okay, I'm sorry. Just for an example, if we get a new county attorney, are we gonna start him out at that rate?
If the
Just a
board-
question.
Yeah, no, if the board wishes to use the banding as a reference, again, then you would have that ability to, as a new person steps into that position, to use a lower band as a start and work up towards a target as they progress in their career. If you're using, you know, again, sticking to the banding would solidify that argument.
A new one would start out at the lower
Lower band.
banding.
Yep,
Well, that would make sense, yeah.
Yeah.
and work towards
I'm
target.
just was wondering if that's how it worked or not, but. Yeah, I thought that, yep.
So if we use the banding, where would he be at?
Over
That
here on the
far
right.
column.
The 123, 156?
So the
I
275 is.
don't know if we can pick and choose. I mean, we either do one thing or we don't, or we, you know,
Yeah.
we can't differentiate between people, can we?
Nope. No. I say that, I make the motion, we do the 275 for the county attorney.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion?
Carol, the 275 is built into the budget on these as well? Okay.
You want to do roll call on each one?
Sure.
Okay.
District 1,
Nope.
District 2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
3, 1.
Okay, moving on, sheriff is next. The position.
I want to point out that last year the sheriff's position was treated differently, and I don't think that was right. I believe he had 2% last year, whereas the others got 275, if I'm not correct. Again, I like to see it fair for everybody. If we're gonna approve it for one elected official, it should be the same for everybody. Now, I don't know whether understand, or I guess I don't know the reasons why that was done, but I know the sheriff has expressed to me his dismay of why he was treated differently, and I don't have a good answer for him. So I know there's been a suggestion to try to make that up. I don't know how to do that either. Then we would have to treat that differently. It's a tough one.
So we
And
need a motion.
I make a motion, we do a 275 for the sheriff position as well.
Is there a
Second.
Roll call vote or further discussion? I should. Okay.
Well,
Not from me.
okay, District 1,
No.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
3,
Moving,
1 again. Yep.
moving on to the county recorder. Just kind of low.
Commissioners,
Yeah.
Yes.
pardon me for interrupting. I believe the statute requires for each of your elected officials that you state the exact amount of the salary that's being proposed for the subsequent year, so if you could put that on the record,
Yeah, I
that
think-
would be
Okay, yeah.
helpful, administrator.
Yep.
It
Right.
actually states that it's done by resolution.
Pardon?
It's done by resolution, not by motion.
Well, that'd have been nice to know before. So we're supposed to do this by resolution for each.
I don't believe we ever have, so.
No, we've always done
and-
motions in the last,
Yeah.
Well, let's do motions on everything and then make a resolution on the bunch.
okay.
And whereas
Sounds,
we-
sounds like a plan. So presently, the county recorder's at 62,000, and 2.75 would bring it up to 63,705. Need a motion.
And
So
this is-
moved.
Yeah, go ahead.
I need a second.
Burns.
Was there
I'll second that.
further discussion?
This is where I'd like to point out
Yeah,
the difference in, you know what I'm saying, from, we're talking 1,300 some dollars versus 3,000. And she has a big responsibility as well, being the head of that recorder's office, so.
in order to keep it fair, I feel that we need to
Yeah.
do the 2.75 this year and put that all of these positions in discussion with the personnel committee for a new wage scale for next year.
Yep.
You want roll call?
If you're ready, District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
3,
Yes,
District 4.
Yes. And auditor treasurer is,
move for the 2 3/4%.
I'll second that.
further discussion? All in favor? Or roll
I'm-
call?
You can go that way, John.
District 1,
No.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes,
4.
Yes. And last is the commissioners, at $19,016, 2.75, or nothing.
I move nothing.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's the only easy one there is.
Does that mean 0?
It's 0, yes.
Okay.
0, 0, or no?
You got a second already, right?
I don't
Yep.
think we've had a wage increase for 9 years now. That's okay. Roll call
Alright.
vote?
District 1,
I'm voting on 0, right?
0%
That's correct.
change.
Yes.
Yep. 2,
Yes.
3,
Yes,
4.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that should
Alright.
take care of that.
no,
Oh, we need
Yes,
a,
yeah. Would you like, okay. So, for the county attorney, it is 116,654. For the sheriff, 102,782. For the recorder, 63,705. And for the auditor treasurer, 83,650. And for the commissioners, it's the
19.
same number, 19,016.
so do we need a motion
Yes.
for a resolution then?
Yes, so I will draft a resolution for approval.
In a future date?
Well, we can still
17.
make a motion to approve the resolution with those numbers included.
If you wish
I
to do
just-
that, it'll be resolution 19, double check.
47, I think.
All right, we'll make it resolution 1944.
Need a motion to approve resolution 1944 at the stated amounts as we just,
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
Okay.
Okay.
Draft that up and add it to the minutes.
Hmm?
I'll draft that up and add it to the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did we vote? Yes.
Yes, we did.
Okay, number 5, action item. Consider acceptance. What?
Are we gonna go into closed session on that?
No.
We can,
We
We
can
can.
if you want to,
Yep.
but
so,
Okay, if we're not, then I'm fine.
all right. So, to start this off, we did the bid off yesterday with the 3 original bidders. At the end of the bid off, the high bid was $187,000 received from Mr. Dennis Gavin. And so that and the original 3 offers are up to the board for consideration. So if you wish to proceed directly, a motion to approve resolution 1943, authorizing the sale of the land at that bidded price. If you wish to discuss that offer further and consider counteroffer, et cetera, you can go into closed session and discuss if you wish.
I make a motion that we accept the high offer from Dennis Gavin of $187,000.
Second.
further
Question.
discussion.
Questions?
Yes.
So we paid, by my calculation, someplace in the neighborhood of $330,000 for that land when we bought it, am I correct?
It was
About $15,000 an acre?
I think it was 13,900 an acre. No?
Carol, do we know what
What
that
you
land
got,
cost
Carol?
us?
I believe it was close to 15.
So it was 14.9? Yeah.
Okay. 14.9. So we're selling it for using the 15, not the 14.9. We're selling it for about $140,000 less than we paid for it.
Yep.
Correct, but our attorney Yacht brought that up last week, that at that time, we were the only ones interested in it and they got top price. So we don't need to consider that with selling it. Well, we can consider it, but
There's another way to look at that. We knew we were never going to get our money out of that chunk of ground. And that purchase was made by a previous board years ago, with the intentions of building the county shop on it. Well, throughout the years, that never materialized. So what do we do with this 22 acres? As a county, I don't feel we should be involved in owning land that we're not using. And there's also the fact that we've gained some income off this. And I know it's been a while, but I inquired with Carol on how much income we had gotten off it. I believe it's roughly around 50,000, 47,000. Yep. So we could tack that onto the 187. It gets us a little closer, but by no means makes up the difference. But
So the total cost of the land was $329,383.40, which comes out to about $14,900.
okay, it's 14.9. Yep.
With all the costs involved.
Yep.
and we made income of about 47,000, you said, which we end up paying taxes on, income tax. Doesn't the county have to do
We
that?
paid property tax on
Property
that.
tax, I meant.
Right.
Yeah, we've been paying.
That the money collected for the rent was earmarked to maintain the building out here, so I don't know how much has actually been spent for the windows and things.
I guess,
We didn't have to pay for those because we had rental income, so.
I can understand Bob's point
Oh, I do too. Yep.
Well, however, again, continuing to sit on it, my hope is that by selling this to Mr. Gavin, we have potentially promoted some economic development in Caledonia, which is good for Caledonia, good for Houston County. So in that respect, I mean, the gentleman's a businessman, and there's no doubt in my mind that it's going to be put to good use. So that makes me feel better about the small bath we're taking on the sale.
So there's a motion to accept the 187 from Mr. Gavin.
I consider it to be a pretty good bath. So,
Yeah. You want a roll call vote on this also? Or
Yes,
all
please.
in favor? Or you want roll?
You roll call, please.
Okay. District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Did that sigh get recorded?
I think we're ready to move on to discussion items, and because Brian is here, we're going to start with Brian on your update before we go switch up. Okay, I should have asked you that.
No, that's,
So, quick update here. I don't know if I want to say quick, but over the past several decades, Houston County has shared a shop up in La Crescent, where La Crescent Township owns the shop. Houston County has been utilizing the site with them. We've split some costs to reconstruct most items over the last, at least back into the 80s, 50-50 for a lot of these costs. But there was no formal agreement saying what responsibilities either party has. About all that we knew is that the township owns the property and the county does not have a formal agreement to be there. So in discussions with the township and some county staff, county attorney, MCIT, decided to try to formalize an agreement, knowing that the existing sand shed's in poor condition and the township has some equipment that they've been sitting outside that they wanted to get inside. So in an attempt to formalize an agreement, I worked with Attorney Yant, drafted an agreement essentially spelling out terms that would mirror what we've been doing for the last few decades. Essentially, a 25-year agreement. We'll split the cost 50-50 to rebuild a new salt shed, continue using the back 2 bays in their shop for our snow plow, our front end loader, pickup, whatever we have up there for equipment at that time, tractor for mowing. And this agreement got sent on to the township. Teresa Walter and myself met with them here a couple months ago. They took the agreement, they reviewed it, and they provided feedback earlier about a week and a half ago. What the township countered with their proposal is substantially different than what the county proposed. The township is saying that they have consensus that the town board does not want to have any equipment housed outside. Previous discussions when they brought this up is they might need to add on to the building to make that happen. What they're proposing is not to add on to the building, but to rent one bay in the rear end of the rear backside of the shop at $12 a square foot for one bay. That back area of the shop is 43 feet by 20 feet, so if you cut that down in half because there's 2 bays, that amounts to $10,320 per year of rent that would be paid to the township for a term of 10 years. So $10,000 per year times 10 years would be about $100,000 the county would pay in rent to stay there over the next 10 years. In addition to that, the they would like to have the county pay for half the cost to repave the site. The asphalt on that site is in poor condition. There's a lot of really small chunks of pavement throughout essentially the entire parking area, driving area. They want that done at the same time as County 6 repaving, which is going to take place in 2020. Our quick estimate on cost of that is going to be $50,000 to $75,000, depending on if it's 3 inches of asphalt, 4 inches of asphalt, if we need to haul some material away for drainage, or if we can leave everything on site. So, figure half that cost, $25,000 to $35,000, $40,000 to the county, and then build a new sand salt storage building, of which is in poor shape. It was patched together to get by for this coming winter, but the one wall is in pretty substantial need of repair. Overall, the buildings should be replaced. They want the county to pay 2/3 of that cost, township 1/3. Looking at costs, previously I was told $85 per square foot would be a good price estimate to use. I think we can probably do it for $50 a square foot. If you look at the existing side of the building, that'll be $167,000 to $285,000 to build a new building. 2/3 of that cost would be the county with their proposal. However, with La Crescent being a part of the MS4 area, storing material outside is causes a lot of additional requirements. Ideally, the new building would be double the size of the existing building. What we did the last couple winters, we hauled material throughout the winter from Houston over to La Crescent. So that would double that cost. So if you factor in what the township is asking for, you're looking at county's cost being anywhere from $350,000 to $500,000. All that but $100,000 would be paid for up front over this next year. The remainder would be paid $10,000 per year over the next 10 years. No guarantee beyond that 10 years that we could remain, and we'd only have one bay to work out of. And how do we have a plow truck and a front end loader and other stuff functioning out of one bay when it doesn't physically fit? So I think at this point we need to kind of make a decision on do we want to stay there, try to negotiate with the township farther to work on an agreement that's going to work for the county, and if so, I need some direction of what to do. Or do we want to consider when we build our new shop in Caledonia, we move the sign shop from Hoka over here, we I don't know if I want to say remodel, but make some adjustments in the Hoka shop. You move our operation out of La Crescent into the Hoka sign shop. The Hoka shop used to have a plow truck in there years ago. It could pretty easily be retrofitted to work meet our needs again over there. Overall, operationally, we'd start off the day driving from Hoka to La Crescent, start plowing probably in La Crescent still, so there's no major changes that way. Finish up in Hoka rather than starting in La Crescent, and then at the end of the day having to deadhead back to the shops, so in La Crescent. So overall, operationally, I don't think it's going to be a major issue either way. So it comes down to price, and do we want to be functioning on our own land, or do we want to have an agreement with the townships? So I'll leave it at that. And
So first question, if this doesn't happen, I mean, if we have no agreement with La Crescent Township, how long before they could kick us out? I mean, is that we're done and we leave tomorrow?
Technically, there's nothing that would force them to let us remain. We have had discussions with them, 2-3 months ago, when the sand shed originally had some issues with the one wall caving in and stuff, and spending money on doing repairs. And we had a discussion with them as far as how long are we going to have to know before we need to move out? And they said they don't want to force us to get out immediately. They know that winter is coming up. They don't want to have us make changes right away this winter. I would think that we can stay throughout this winter, maybe have to pay them something to remain, but they might not allow us to remain for the winter of 2020, 2021.
What has to happen in Hoka to make that functional for us?
If we move our signs materials out of Hoka, we can pretty much get the plow in there pretty quickly and easily. So it's minimal work that way. It's just what do we do with our sign operation at that time? We have a small room that we make signs in. That room, whether we keep that in Hoka for the short term with the intention on moving it, that might be a little bit difficult. At the same time, I don't know that we have space at our current shop to move them over. I think we need to look at that in a little bit more detail. I think we can reduce our inventory. We can get that plow truck inside for next winter, no problem. But
Did you ever, on the land that we acquired, there's a pole shed on that land. Is that a functional building that we could use temporarily?
I believe so.
So we would have a space for storage of a piece of equipment if we needed to.
Yeah, I mean it's not
not
heated.
insulated
It's
or
not
heated, but it's-
yeah, not where you'd want to be working out of. You can't have the sign maker equipment and stuff in there. But as far as storing signs and storing stuff in there, I think we could.
We talked about this last night at our highway shop committee meeting, and my suggestion was, it's just a suggestion, but to come up with a short-term agreement until we can move. You know, I don't know if we're talking we could stay there till next fall and then move or whatever. I guess that would be up to you, but that's what I was looking at, thinking of doing, is having a short-term agreement. But I don't think we should be committed to a long-term situation, spending money on a property that we don't own. So,
Well, if they're willing to, as you indicated, Brian, probably letting this season go, why don't we just do that with and indicate to them that our future plans are probably to move, or are to move.
Okay.
and that'd be fine if we could do that verbally too. I guess that'd be fine if that would be agreeable.
Anybody have room in their basement for sign shop? Yeah. We need a motion to that effect then, to work out an agreement to stay the rest of this winter season with the intent to,
Are we gonna,
we need some kind of,
you need something official like that?
Yeah.
oh, you don't need
Well, I
a
mean,
motion.
as long as I have a direction, I can
He
pursue.
just-
Yeah,
I don't
so
know
A
that we need to.
consensus,
I think
and then,
consensus.
Consensus.
Yeah,
See
Yeah.
what they come back
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, 'cause I mean,
Yeah.
I think overall, I mean, the township's kind of looking for, do they want to add on to the building? What do they need to do in there, and how big of a sand shed needs to be built next year? What I would like to do is say if we do it, try to stay there until midsummer so we can get through this winter, make adjustments in the spring, into the early summer months, and then, move out in June or whatever it is. Or at least be prepared to move out in June if needed. It'd be nice to obviously be there another year longer, but that does affect that salt shed building, so.
So is that the consensus of the board?
I would agree to that.
I would.
I would too.
Me too.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll pursue that with the
Alright.
township, and thank you.
Administrator updates.
Quickly, did everybody receive the email from Julie Ring with the update on AMC's response to the Department of Health's?
I don't think I've
We-
read it.
we
If I
got
did
it. Monday at 3:07, but I haven't had a chance to look at it yet,
Okay.
because we had a meeting,
It's from Julie Ring?
yes,
At AMC.
yesterday came.
I didn't get it.
I didn't get it.
Okay, I will forward it out to everyone. Essentially, AMC is addressing the issues that we've been discussing with Department of Human Services. AMC's recommendation is that every county delay repayments to DHS until they have a chance to approach it legislatively and at least look for a legislative solution to the issue. It sounds like the first of the three of those issues that were brought forth by DHS was that substance use disorder for mental disease, IMD, cost share, which for us was about $19,000. Sounds like DHS was just going to put it in the next monthly bill and not as a separate line item. And so they have been approached and said that's foul, we need to separate that out and show that as a distinct line item so it can be addressed. And the AMC recommendation and the policy recommendation is to not pay that yet until it gets addressed. So I'll forward that out to you so you all can.
In conjunction with this, I would suggest that if you either get the St. Paul Pioneer Press or the Minneapolis Tribune, if you don't, I'd buy it today, because front page, one of the DHS people who was involved in this, obviously, was apparently cleared of fraud charges or whatever and reassigned. So all I read was the headline, so, but it's pertinent, obviously, to what's going on.
And then the other thing is, of course, we'll be at the AMC conference next week. I will forward you an email with the reservation details.
Are they made for Sunday night?
They're made from Sunday night
'cause I
through
want to
Wednesday.
drive to St. Cloud on Monday.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, reservations were just across the street from the conference center. We're not in the hotel adjacent, but across the street. And I'll take care of the reservation change that we need to make. So,
They're at the Grand Stay Residential Suite,
Yep.
right across the street from Kelly and
What's the name of that?
Grand State.
Grand Stay
Oh.
Residential Suite.
Yep.
Yep.
I was just waiting until we were closer so it wouldn't get buried in your inbox. So I'll send
That's
that to
fine.
you this week.
I already printed it because, in case Jack calls me for his confirmation number.
Thank you.
That's what I have. And then, of course, the next meeting is the 17th, and we'll have the budget information there.
So when you address the budget, I guess I'll ask this to Carol. So we approved the sale of the land.
Mhm.
That transaction goes through. Does that help offset the deficit that we're looking at trying to fill?
Well,
It goes to the highway department, but would it help offset that?
well, you know, I think you had asked that before, whether the highway department paid for that land, and it actually wasn't.
It was
Okay.
general fund, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Okay.
capital projects and bonding, which
Mm.
we ended up having to restate it on our financial statement because they were going to use like the reimbursement expenses for the highway department building that were paid within 6 months prior to bonding for it could be included in that, and we didn't do bonding for the highway department building, so it did end up falling back to the general fund. So it was actually the general fund that used it, but I'm assuming we're gonna get the money prior to December 31st, or,
Well, it depends on how fast we can
That might be tight,
set up the deal.
but I would think so.
If it doesn't come until after December 31st.
okay, if it comes before December 31st, it can be something that's used, and we receive it and it goes into our fund balance. It can be used then directly as that fund balance usage, specifically for that amount, to reduce the budget need. If it comes in
January.
if we know we're not gonna get it until January, we would set up a revenue and a line item so that it does offset just directly from revenue.
So
So
in the
is-
one case, it comes out of a reserve, in the other case, it's a direct
Right.
revenue that offsets the deficit.
Yep,
So but it
Either
would-
way works.
Either way, we can use it to balance.
right.
I mean, I'll obviously get with Mr. Gavin and see how fast we can execute. What was originally published was closing to occur no later than February 1st. So we gave lots of wiggle
Likely it'll
room,
be
so
next year,
it could be either way
Yeah.
at this point.
And that
Yeah.
would actually probably be easier
Yeah.
Yeah.
if it was after the first.
Given the holiday month and everything, that's gonna be hard to get it done before the end of the year.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Commissioner reports, comments.
Well, I was gone for a week and a half, so I don't have a whole lot to report on, other than, since I've been back, I've been talked to by several people. One, a township board member with concerns as far as the fee increases that we've established in the dump sites. The concern being that by raising the fees, especially on the tires, that we're gonna start seeing more tires and whatnot in the ditches of Houston County. I have a concern about that, and, you know, Houston County was a forerunner as far as all of these recycling and dump site issues are concerned and whatnot, and he'd hate to see us go back as far as what's gonna happen along township and county roads. We discussed it a little bit from the perspective of the costs that the county is incurring because of the reduction in aluminum and steel and whatnot, so that it's not self-sufficient. And rather than raise the fees to the various townships and cities to make the users of the facility a little more, you know, they gotta share the part of the cost as well. But I told them I would talk to the board about that from the perspective that what this means. It has generated additional revenue as far as the department is concerned and done what we anticipated in that regard, but they are concerned about what's gonna happen around the township. So I think it's something that we should keep an eye on for future reference. The other thing that I've had numerous calls about is and this alludes to what you've been talking about with regard to the survey for the comprehensive land use plan, or the comprehensive plan, not land use plan, but the comprehensive plan, and trying to understand what this means to the 1 per 40/40. And I've told them that at the present, it's the survey and the comprehensive plan doesn't mean anything to the 1 per 40/40 because that's an ordinance issue. So once the comprehensive plan is done, then the ordinances can be adjusted accordingly if we make more than 1 per 40/40. If, you know, some people say don't worry about the 1, 2, or 3 property, just open it up. Some people say we have to protect the ag lands. And it depends on if you're talking to city or rural people, you know, as far as that's concerned. But I told them I didn't think we had any reason to not protect the 1, 2, or 3 land, but the non-ag land, there's a potential that we're gonna make some changes on the 1 per 40/40, but I had no answer as far as what we're gonna do, but that is the big question that I'm getting from people as far as their issues with the survey and what it means and what's gonna happen. That's all I got.
And that was the feedback I was getting, is that the survey seemed like it was more pertaining to ordinances versus a comp plan. And so, that's why there was the concern of, okay, what are we doing here? Are we going to create a comp plan that's going to drastically change our ordinances here? Or are we just creating a comp plan that's a general document? I mean, as far as the ordinance changes, that there's a process we go through for that. We got to go through the planning commission and it comes to the county board. So I think there's some confusion on that, and I believe the survey is done.
We talked about extending it. The survey is still open.
I think we should just let it go, expire.
Okay.
Because there's only been, I don't know, last time I checked it was 330 or something, but I think we should just let that expire.
Okay. What we'll do, I think the 9th of December is the next time the committee meets, and so what we'll do is we'll shut it off a few days before that, so that Aaron and Jim have a chance to kind of consolidate that data and make something presentable for the land use committee. And of course, we'll share that with the board as well.
Just to reiterate what Bob was saying about I too have been getting some calls about especially the tire fee. And some highway department people have said that they've been seeing some tires along the road. Some township people too. Our township found some tractor tires in the ditch, which we've always charged for that. But so yeah, it's a concern. It's $2 a tire. It's not. It's a lot cheaper than what the tire dealers charge. but I think it's something we need to keep an eye on, and make sure this doesn't get out of hand. So let's give it some time and see what happens here. If you know, we'll have to revisit the issue if it becomes a problem.
I discussed the same issue with Aaron before the implementation and had the same concerns. One thing, well, looking at, again, the what we're able to receive now on these things, it's obvious why an increase would make sense. As far as the tires are concerned, I had been told that there are some people who kind of con the system, have a lot of tires and make a lot of trips.
Well, the
and
first
so-
4 are free, I think, or
Right.
something, wasn't it? And then after that, they charged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's unfortunate too, but I agree, we need to keep an eye on it. We don't need to be filling ditches with junk again, so. Did you have more for
Yeah,
your report?
I do.
Yeah.
I just wanted to extend thoughts and prayers to former Commissioner Kelleher and
Yeah.
his family on the passing of Kevin Kelleher. He was a commissioner for 16 years, I believe. So,
Yep.
and the other thing I wanted to, let's see, was there something else too? Well, we had our highway shop committee meeting last night. Barrientos didn't get back to us with the final numbers or estimates. He just didn't, because of the holiday weekend, he didn't have time to get everything put together, so we're gonna have another meeting, so I assume, and then we'll go from there. So there isn't much new to report yet on that. We did discuss on scaling back the project a little bit on the cold storage end of it. And because that's a considerable amount of money for the cold storage. And we talked about, at least I talked about it, and Jack confirmed it too, I believe. You can speak to that yourself, but
Cool.
of possibility of using the old shop for storage for just a time being as a cold storage unit. So, I mean, we're kicking ideas around. It's nothing finalized yet, but that's what we're talking about as far as that goes. The other thing is on the 21st of November, I attended the Board of Adjustment hearing for the Schutz Quarry. It was a rather lengthy meeting.
Yes, it was.
And it ended up a 3-to-1 vote to shut the quarry down, and they discussed on voting on the findings at their next December 19th meeting. They needed some time to put their findings together and to vote on those at the 19th. That was what was discussed at that meeting. However, over the weekend, I happened to look at the county website. It was Sunday night, I believe, and I noticed there was a special meeting, a special Board of Adjustment hearing that was held yesterday at 9 o'clock in the morning. That kind of surprised me. I inquired with Sam on that, and he said that, you know, according to what was posted, it was posted the 27th, the day before Thanksgiving, and it was held yesterday morning at 9 o'clock, which I thought was kind of unusual. So I came to yesterday's meeting, and I noticed the applicants weren't there, and the dissenting vote from the last meeting wasn't there. And that concerns me on the optics of fairness. And it's unusual that this was held at during the day meeting versus when it's usually on a Thursday night. I tried to inquire with Aaron on this. He didn't have time to talk to me yesterday. He only had a few seconds for me before he had to go to a personal appointment, but I feel that this all may be legal. The way they set this meeting up, but I feel that it's not, doesn't look fair to the public when you set up a meeting a day before a holiday for the following Monday morning, and then the applicants weren't there. Obviously, they weren't notified of it. I did talk to Kenny Anderson, who was the dissenting vote on that 21st meeting, and he said he got the findings in the mail, but there was no indication of a meeting that day. He had tried calling Aaron and did not get a call back. Aaron did tell me in the few seconds I had with him that he was notified by email. Well, the problem is Kenny doesn't do email. So I feel that it should have made something as important as this, as what they decided on, that all members should be there to do the findings. And this doesn't look fair to me, the way it was handled. And I just wanted to point this out.
That's a good point, because we're trying very hard to be transparent with all of our,
Exactly. And it's highly unusual the way this was handled. It's important to have the optics of fairness. And in my opinion, I don't feel this was a fair hearing. It wasn't a hearing, it was a meeting. So it may be all legal in the legal world, but it just doesn't look good. So I just wanted to point that out. That's all I have.
Okay. I think Eric's pretty much covered. I was at the county shop meeting also. Covered the important part, I think. And I was also at the hearings you're referring to. My only question, Eric, would be, is that the vote was out in the public. So I thought the whole issue was that they wanted some time to clarify
To write the findings.
clarify the findings of fact.
Yep.
And after they did that, it wasn't going to change the vote. It was simply going to outline why the vote was what it was.
Right. But the fact that but they had said that night it was going to be the next scheduled meeting on the 19th.
Okay.
Not this special meeting.
And they should have held it when they said it was going to be.
That's what I'm saying, and the
Okay.
fact that the dissenting vote wasn't there, he should have had a chance to be there and make the meeting work for everybody, so he could get his views across.
Okay.
Did you discuss it with the board chair at all?
I did not.
Okay. All right. The only other thing I would mention is that I think as a county board representing Houston County, we would be remiss not to offer our congratulations to that terrific football team from Caledonia High School. If anything has put Houston County on the map in the state of Minnesota, it's that football team, because when I meet people from other counties, very often it's like, wow, what do you guys got down there? You know. So,
Well, now you should say we have a nationally famous police dog too.
oh, that's true. So, but
We're ready to
anyhow,
come back.
congratulations to the football team, and that's all I have.
I was gonna bring up also about our condolences to Kevin Kelleher's family He was actually a past president for AMC
In
from Houston
96.
County. Put us
Yeah.
on the map that way too. And I don't really have any meetings to report on, but I would like to quickly, I got them ready to go through some of these committees so we know who's on what, okay? So I'll just lay them out here, the ones that Fred was on or an alternate, and just, we can go through it. Land Use and Public Works, I'm on it, was on it with Fred. Would somebody officially like to be on that committee with me? I asked
I'm fine with
Bob to come this morning just so we'd have two commissioners there. The Finance Standing Committee meets that fourth week of the month. And at this time, it's Eric and was Fred. Anybody want to take over finance meeting?
Oh, it was Bob.
It was
Bob
Fred and I.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
it was
was,
Fred and
I
Bob.
was originally, and then when Bob came on,
Okay.
I passed it off to him.
Okay.
But that normally meets the same time as,
Finance is on the off weeks.
Yes.
Public Health,
It's
Human
the only-
Services,
Oh, it is the off
and
weeks.
Land Use meet on the same time.
I can do it, or if anybody else wishes to get on finance.
I could do it.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'd like to do land use, but then that conflicts with my human resources.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I
can't-
was
I can't
confusing
do
the
that.
two.
Yeah. So Jack, you want to be on finance for the time being, and if you
For the
can't
time
make that,
being,
I
yeah.
will take it over.
All
The
right.
two, so. Okay, personnel, we already did that at workshop, and that,
Yep.
so, Jack and Eric. Down to CJC committee, he was actually, an alternate on that. Bob is the main one, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see, the next one, Highway Building Committee, we did that at workshop, that's Jack and Eric.
Yeah.
Then we moved down to AMC District, well, that, we'll wait till after the election. I made a note of. As far as the Bear Creek Watershed Committee, I think Eric was kind of taking that over, weren't you? With, Fred's position, is that?
Is that the water planning, or is that, no,
Oh,
what is
that's
that?
It's another
Bear
one.
Creek watershed.
Bear Creek?
Yeah.
That's
I
different.
don't think they, yeah, it's different, but I haven't heard that they had a meeting either, but he was the delegate for that.
I thought that was, is that the one they're closing down?
No,
No?
No, Bear Creek is actually like a Iowa, doesn't start here, then moves down. into-
Starts over on the other side of Spring Grove. I went with those guys and looked at some
Yeah.
washouts and some
I don't think
karst holes.
okay. Bob, you want to continue?
I'll take it.
Okay. And moving down to Extension Committee, I was on it with Fred. Who wants to go with me? They meet every other month on a Thursday evening.
Yeah, I could take that. I was on a extension as a private citizen, so I'm familiar with that.
Okay. And then I brought up, oh, wait a minute here, I'm moving down to Selco. The only reason I had that start is because Eric is having difficulty making that meeting. Does anybody else want to be on the Selco Board of Directors?
When is it?
It's quarterly, and the last one was in October here. And that would have been my first one. I had training before that, so
Is that in,
it's in Rochester. At least the last one was.
I can do it.
Bob? Okay. And same with SEMCAC. Eric, did you want office of?
I can still go to that.
Okay, you'll keep, I just had made note last night
Yeah.
about that. And the last one is Water Planning Committee. That's the one that Eric was going for.
Yeah, and I can continue with that too.
Okay. And that should take care of that unless I missed something that somebody knows about.
Was there something behind finance, between CJC and finance? No?
Finance, personnel,
Personnel, okay,
no,
that's fine.
I just-
Personnel we've taken care of, so,
Yes.
all right.
so that should take care of that. Right, you got all those? I just used your sheet,
Yep.
so. Okay. Anything else to come before the board?
Move to adjourn.
So moved. I mean, second. Sorry. It's been a
We
long
got two
meeting.
motions to adjourn, is there a third? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I-
I do have a question. What's Fred's way?